At number 4, I have the 1990 New York Giants. The New York Giants in 1990 were trying to win their second Super Bowl in 4 years. They felt like they finally had the team to do it. But unfortunately, fate would conspire against them as they ended up losing Pro Bowl quarterback Phil Simms to a season-ending injury. So they would have to rely on veteran quarterback Jeff Hostetler, who was almost about to hang it up. He was very close to retirement when the Giants gave him the call to start at QB. And no one knew what to expect. And no one knew what to expect from Hostetler. No one knew if he could at least lead the team. Of course, they knew he wasn't going to be a Phil Simms, but they didn't know if he was going to lead the team, if the team was going to be successful, or if the team was going to win. So they really had to rely on their run game and running back Otis Anderson. So they went to the 1990 season, and they were dominant. Thanks to a large part, thanks largely to their defense. Man, the Giants, they won 10 straight games to start off the 1990 season. Like I said, they were dominant thanks to the defense and run game. Now, in late November, early December, they lost 3 games. Big important games to the Eagles, 49ers, and Bills. But they won 3 more. They ended up finishing 13-3, winning the NFC East, getting the second seed in the NFC. Now, the Giants didn't have too much offensively. As they finished almost in the middle of the pack in every offensive category. They were 17th in offense, averaging 300 yards per game. They were 22nd in passing, averaging 172 passing yards per game, but they were 8th in rushing, averaging 128 rushing yards per game. They were 17th in passing TDs, only finishing with 18 passing touchdowns, which averaged out to 1.1 passing touchdowns per game. But they were 7th in rushing touchdowns, which they finished with 17 rushing touchdowns, which averaged to 1 rushing touchdown per game. And they finished 15th in points, averaging 20 points per game. Now, of course, they were dominant defensively, thanks to Lawrence Taylor and Pepper Johnson. But they finished in the middle of the pack in almost every defensive category. They were 17th in defense, giving up 300 yards per game. They were 22nd in pass defense, giving up 172 yards per game. They were 8th in rushing defense, giving up only 128 rushing yards per game. They were 15th in points allowed, giving up 20 points per game. They finished 24th in sacks, finishing with 30 sacks, which they averaged 1.8 sacks per game, but they were 8th in takeaways, which they created 34 takeaways. All right, so the Giants rode into the playoffs strong, hoping to get back to the Super Bowl and win it. And they were about to see if Hostetler could lead the team. Now, they had a first-round bye, but they ended up dominating the Chicago Bears in the divisional round, 31-3, and they were on to the NFC Championship game with a huge test. They had to go on the road in San Francisco to take on the 49ers. The 49ers were coming off of coming off of back-to-back Super Bowl titles, and they were looking for the three-peat. And this NFC Championship game was definitely a grind-out game. It wasn't pretty. Seemed like neither team could really get any offense going, as both teams had some major turnovers. But Hochstetler led a drive late in the fourth quarter that ended up getting the Giants into field goal range to try to advance to their first Super Bowl since '86. Hochstetler completed passes to Bavario and Baker. They ended up getting them into field goal range. Matt Barr came on and knocked through a 42-yard field goal as time expired, and the Giants advanced to the Super Bowl for the first time since 1986. Now in the Super Bowl, they were taking on the Buffalo Bills, who are definitely having a great season as well as a great playoffs. So this was a battle of two New York State teams in this Super Bowl, and only one could walk away with the Lombardi. Now, this game, for the most part, was back and forth between these two teams. You knew it was going to be. Right, Giants started off leading with the 28-yard field goal, but then the Bills, they just went on a little fury, and they led 12-3 in the second quarter, but the Giants responded with some points of their own, especially in the second half, as Otis Anderson scored the go-ahead touchdown, but the Bills wouldn't be denied. Thurman Thomas came back with a 31-yard touchdown as they took a 19-17 lead early in the fourth quarter. But Jeff Hochstetler, who had just went on a game-winning drive in the NFC Championship game against the 49ers, drove him down the field, and Barr knocked a 21-yard field goal through to give the Giants a 20-19 lead. But on the other side, still had Jim Kelly, and as well as Thurman Thomas and all those other dudes. And Jim Kelly, late in the game, drove down the field with some great precision. He was finding all kinds of receivers down the field, and the Bills were on the doorstep of knocking off the Giants and winning the Super Bowl. They had Scott Norwood, who was one of the best kickers in the NFL during that time, on to attempt a field goal to win it. And it definitely looked like that it was going to happen, but the field goal ended up going wide right, and the Giants held off a tough Bills team to win their second Super Bowl in 4 years, their second Super Bowl in franchise history. That was the second Super Bowl title for LT and Bill Parcells. And that missed field goal for Norwood still lives in Super Bowl infamy. Otis Thomas was named Super Bowl MVP. Matter of fact, he is either one of the oldest or the oldest Super Bowl MVP ever, as he had a monster game. He finished with 102 yards on 21 carries and a touchdown. Jeff Hostetler, he was pretty solid. He finished with 20 completions on 32 attempts for 222 yards, a touchdown, and a 93.5 QBR rating. Now, the Giants receiving core was pretty solid. Mark Ingram had 5 receptions on 7 targets for 74 yards. And this Super Bowl team was basically a Cinderella story. That's why I have them here at number 4. This Giants team in 1990 were definitely huge underdogs, especially after Phil Simms went down. A lot of people thought that an older Jeff Hostetler could not lead the team to a winning season, let alone a Super Bowl title. Some people thought that the Giants should just pack it up and just wait till next year. But thanks to a great game plan by Parcells and Bill Belichick and that whole coaching staff, they leaned on the running game and Anderson, as well as their defense led by Lawrence Taylor and Pepper Johnson. And they ended up getting the job done. They dominated the regular season, winning 10 straight. Then in the playoffs, they showed that they could win a dominant game, or they could win some ugly white knuckle, drag out, grind out games. Because the Super Bowl, the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl were just that, grind out games. This wasn't those games were not pretty. They were gritty. And they were very close from start to finish. Plus, also, Otis Anderson doesn't get credit for the season he had. He finished with over 1,000 yards. Also, 8 rushing touchdowns. Let me make sure that's correct. Well, he finished with 700 rushing yards, but still 11 rushing touchdowns. That was the previous season he finished with 1,000 yards. My bad. But this team definitely deserves a lot more props for what they accomplished in that 1999 season. Doing it with a backup quarterback who was past his prime, and also doing this with a running back that was past his prime in a lot of people's eyes. Both of them ended up rewriting the stories of their careers, and they ended up Super Bowl champions. All right, see somebody else in the chat. You said they should have been the number 1 seed there. This is my dude, Blue Boat. Said they should have been the number 1 seed in the NFC that year. You also said that secondary was underrated too. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the Giants definitely had an underrated secondary. Yeah, you had Mark Collins, Everson Wells, as well as Greg Jackson. But a lot of people focused on that front, and that front was pretty doggone good. Like I mentioned, LT as well as Pepper Johnson, but you also had Carl Banks, Gary Reasons in that front line. Just that whole 1990 Giants team is underrated.